Welcome, everybody. We are so glad that you are joining us today. Please go ahead and come on in, and we will get started in the next few minutes. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Transition Assistance Part 2 presentation. We are so thrilled that you are with us today. My name is Kelly Kravitz, and I am the director of our Highly Mobile and At-Risk Student Programs Division. We have a lot of ground to cover today, and so we're just going to go ahead and dive right in to our presentation. And before we really jump in and get started, we would like to just get a sense of where everybody is joining us today across this great state of Texas. And we'd love to know a little bit more about your role. So please choose the role that most closely aligns to what you do, and take a moment to fill out our survey. You're just joining us, please go ahead and jump in on this survey. It's not too late. We'd love to know your role. Please select the one that most closely aligns to the work that you do. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and end that poll, Jimmy, and see where we landed. Wonderful. So we can see here, Jimmy, go ahead and walk us through what we got.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking a moment to answer the poll. Looks like I'm sharing the poll right now, so it looks like quite a few. 39% are district administrators, 3% are campus administrators, 12% school counselors, 2% teachers or academic specialists or academic coaches, 11% social worker case managers, 10% are ESC, 10% ESC staff, 7% is campus support staff, 1% other state agency, and 16% other support role. And of those who are with us today, about 68%, so about a little bit over 2/3, also attended the first session on March 1st.
Wonderful.
Thank you all for joining us again.
Thank you all. Great. So who we are in the Office of Special Populations. As I mentioned, we are the Highly Mobile and At-Risk Student Programs Division. And in the Office of Special Populations at TEA, we equip school systems to increase awareness, promote equitable access, and improve outcomes for all of our special populations. And so the different program areas within our division include work concerning students experiencing homelessness, students who are in foster care or substitute care with DFPS managing conservatorship, students who are military connected, pregnancy-related services, as well as child abuse prevention broadly, and the training requirements that LEAs have. and which includes human trafficking, anti-human trafficking prevention and awareness. We also represent a number of at-risk groups just on different state committees and things of that nature. And so we're really proud of the work that we do within our team and really proud of our office and special populations, increasing awareness and promoting Texas schools in the important work that you guys do every day to serve our students and our families. I have an incredible team with me today, and so each one of us is just going to introduce ourselves. We also have a guest, Jessica Snyder, who's from our Curriculum Standards and Student Support Division. So thrilled that we have her collaboration and having her join us today. But as I mentioned, I'm Kelly Kravitz, and I have the honor of working with my incredible team members. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Jimmy Bowser.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Bowser, the Highly Mobile State Coordinator. This is my been a TA now for about 8 months. This is my 25th year in education. I am a teacher, principal, all over the place. But I'm the program lead for our military connected work here as well as at the Highly Mobile State Coordinator. So I will turn it over to Ms. Jordan Brown.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan Brown. I am the Texas Education for Homeless Children and Youth Program Specialist here in the Highly Mobile Division. I have been at TEA for over 3.5 years now, and I've overseen multiple programs in the division, but now I'm in the homeless department. So I'm excited to present with everyone here today. And I will turn it over to Jessica Snyder.
Thank you, Jordan, and good morning, everyone. Jessica Snyder, Director of Special Projects in the Curriculum Standards and Student Support Division. In our division, we support curriculum-related policies and laws and rules, including the graduation requirements. And so, again, as Kelly said, very excited that we have the opportunity to collaborate as we coordinate across those rules that impact all of our students in Texas. Thank you. I'm going to pass things on now to Dr. LaTrinda Watson.
Good morning, everyone. We are so glad you came to join us today. My name is Dr. LaTrinda Watson. I'm the At-Risk State Coordinator, and I am the point of contact for all things foster care and pregnancy-related services. So I am so happy to be with you today to share this great information. My background, I was previously in the district. I was the foster care liaison for our district. So I do understand this work, and I appreciate everyone who takes the time to do this work. So thank you all, and hope you enjoy this great information we have for you today.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. And like I said, we're just excited to be with you. We have a great diversity of expertise on our team, which really brings our work to life. And even this policy really reflects that. We made a number of changes from the first iteration of this policy. And so with the part 1 and part 2 session, we're really walking you all through those changes and here to support you with implementation. We know that's really where the rubber meets the road. And so want to just support you as you work to implement this work across the state. And so just as a refresher, as a reminder, in our this 2-part series, so we did have our first one on March 1st. And so in that we went over, we did a high-level overview, which we're doing again today. We talked about the transfer of student records and transcripts. We talked about the development of systems to ease transitions and establish procedures to lessen the adverse impact of movement on a student, and that included some adjustments around the enrollment conference definition. She'll definitely want to go back and view that recording just to hear that information. We talked about the provision of special education services, as well as notice to students, educational decision maker, and caseworker. So for today in part 2, we have a really robust training, and we're going to be walking you through the evaluation of student records for students who are homeless in substitute care. Jessica's going to lead us out with that section, really walking us through the updates that we've made. We're going to be discussing placement, educational programs, and courses. We're then going to be talking about the promotion of access to educational extracurricular programs, and we've added summer programs, credit transfer services, electronic courses, and after-school tutoring. So that section has become much more robust in alignment with the policy expectations within the education code. And then lastly, we'll be talking about the promotion of post-secondary information and some adjustments and changes that we've made in that section as well. So just at a very high level, it is our desire to provide you tools, resources around and what the expectations are concerning the procedures and the processes. Last session, we talked about a transition assistance toolkit update that is available. And so we're pleased to announce that that toolkit has now been posted on our website. And so you can find that information. And that, again, aligns with most of what we discussed in part one, but want to make sure that you know that toolkit is available to assist you. And we also see and envision more tools being created just to support all of you with implementation of this entire policy. So as I mentioned today, we're doing an overview now, and then we're going to do the evaluation of student records, placement educational programs and courses, promotion of access, and then promotion of post-secondary. So that will be our order for today. As some just housekeeping and just general reminders, please submit any questions that you have today in the Q&A. We are going to do our very, very best to answer the questions that you have. And there might be some instances where we're not able to answer it, and we'll ask you to email us that question. So if that happens, please just reach out to us. And then we have built in some time at the end of each presenter section for us to be able to answer some questions live. The presentation will be recorded and available on our website. And the PDF and the video will be recorded. And something I want to share is that we are making an adjustment to our process and getting this sent out to you guys immediately. So from Dr. Bowser, we have an email going out that includes the CPEs as well as the recording. And we want that happening immediately, either the day or the day after, so that you guys are getting that information and can share it. We have had some delays with getting our stuff posted. And so and then we just want you to have it like right away. You participated, here it is. And then being able to share it out with folks. That was an adjustment that we made after our last session, and it was really well received. So we will be doing that moving forward. And when you get that information as well, please share that video recording, share it out so that others can be getting the information. And then we'll be doing what we need to do to get it posted on the back end. As you know, we're unable to make our PowerPoints available in advance. So we know that's been requested, but we just appreciate your understanding regarding that process that we have at the agency. And as I did mention, we do have continuing professional education available for our trainings. And so we'll be offering those CPEs today for those of you that participated with us. I'm going to take a deep breath because I feel like I was talking a little bit fast. And we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so what are we talking about here? This is Chapter 89 of the Texas Administrative Code. This specifically lives in adaptions for special populations, and specifically subchapter FF, which is Commissioner Rules concerning transition assistance for highly mobile students who are homeless or in substitute care. So we're really looking at our two highly mobile groups, students experiencing foster care and students experiencing homelessness. And this policy is built off of the Texas Education Code 25007 that requires the agency to develop policy that outlines procedures, processes, and expectations to mitigate barriers for our students and mitigate barriers during their school transitions. And so that's really what this policy is. Our first iteration of this policy was released right during the start of the pandemic, and that was in March of 2020. And so we had worked on this policy for over a year, gathering information concerning best practices, not only in the state of Texas, but actually nationally, and not only looking at homeless youth and foster youth, but also looking at other mobile groups, migrant students, military connected students, because we know that students move for different reasons, but the challenges and the barriers are very, very much the same. And so we really poured ourselves in to that research, to that work, and to that understanding to build this policy framework initially. And then this is our second iteration. So we've worked to update it. We've gotten a lot of feedback. And this part two really just builds on the solid foundation, or not part two, but this iteration builds on the foundation that we established initially in March. We know that was a very, very, very challenging time for our whole world, for schools, And so if there are things today that you're hearing for the first time or that you're not aware of, it's completely okay. This is an opportunity to get this information and to think about, okay, how can we integrate this in our upcoming school year? How do we make this is already effective, this policy? So what can we be doing now to support our school community with implementing? And this update that we're going over did become effective January 1st, 2023. So it was a mark in the sand for this new 2023 year. And so again, just grateful to be able to walk you all through today and look forward to supporting you with implementation regarding this. Again, just a very high level. I know that those that were with us last time you heard this, but for those that are new, we just want to walk you through what are some of the key takeaways from this policy update looking at the rule overall. And so that first orange column there, you see enhance the enrollment conference definition. So we clarified that and we enhanced it. The award of credit section was adapted and renamed evaluation of student records. And this was a very, very comprehensive update that Jessica is going to walk us through. So really, really excited about the updates that we were able to make there. We also expanded the promotion of access to educational and extracurricular programs, really to align with all of the requirements that are in 25007. And so Dr. Bowser will be walking us through that section today. We also strengthened the promotion of post-secondary information. And so you'll see those changes and adjustments that we made there. And then lastly, we removed homeless from notice to students' educational decision maker, because that's really a requirement that's only for students in substitute care who have a designated educational decision maker. So a very high level elevator pitch. Those are some of the changes. But again, in today's presentation, we're really going to walk you through exactly what the requirements and updates are, and then information that's available, strategies to support you with implementation. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jessica Snyder, who's going to walk us through the evaluation of student records and the updates and changes that have been made to this section. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Kelly, and hello again, everyone. So as Kelly said, I'm going to review 19 TAC 89.1607. These are rules regarding the evaluation of student records for students who are homeless or in substitute care. Before I get started, I want to point out that you'll see several citations within this rule in Chapter 89 for sections of Chapter 74. Chapter 74 is where our general rules for curriculum requirements, including the graduation requirements and the award of credit, are found. So what this section 89.1607 does is it cross-references the general curriculum rules while establishing any additional provisions or requirements specific to this student population. And it's why I'm here as a co-presenter, is to speak to those connection points. So you'll notice one other thing, you'll notice that there is underlining throughout this section to identify, you can see on this slide here, to identify essentially what we're considering new. The changes to align with Chapter 74 and other curriculum related laws and rules are significant enough that we're considering these changes as all new. So instead of highlighting differences, I'm really going to be walking through these rules as essentially what this new section requires. And we're going to do that by going through section by section. And so I'm going to start with Section A. Section A establishes a requirement that districts and charter schools adopt a policy to ensure that credit, including proportionate credit, has been awarded to students for coursework that they completed prior to enrolling in that school or that school district. So first, I want to highlight the reference to 74.26 and proportionate credit. So TAC 74.26 is where requirements for the award of credit that apply to all students is outlined, as I previously mentioned. Proportionate credit is when a district can award a student 1/2 credit for completing 1/2 of a course. So what A does is it requires that there is an actual policy in place that is ensuring that that appropriate award of credit for full and half credit is happening. Each kind of subsequent subsection that I'm going to walk you through of this rule focuses kind of on a different aspect of the evaluation of records and the award of credits that districts should ensure are addressed and that they're addressing and aligning to in this overarching policy that's required as a part of Section A. All right, so with that, let's kind of move through some of the nuts and bolts of these provisions. The focus of subsection B is that districts and schools must ensure that student records are evaluated promptly and that they're complete, that they're accurate, and that they're up to date. I think of this as the "do you have everything" subsection. We know under the circumstances that some students are withdrawing from or enrolling or transferring into a new district that all of their records may not be complete. And what B does is really puts responsibility on the receiving district to ensure that they have everything they need to ensure that they have a complete, accurate, and up-to-date record. And I will say, as a side note, I think one of the best ways to confirm that is making that point of contact at the sending district, the district of withdrawal, and often it's having a conversation. I mean, we rely on TREX for the records that it can transmit, but it's really limited to code tables and values. There's a lot more information, including academic information, that might not be a part of that record. And sometimes a conversation or transfer of other records, coursework, or even assignments can help ensure that you have a complete student record. All right, so with that, that's complete, accurate, and up to date. Subsection C. This section or subsection requires that the receiving district must develop, maintain, and regularly update local records and documentation, including transcripts. So this is, once you have them and you're theirs, you have to continue that maintenance of the record. It's really critical that students' records are updated on that regular basis. And that might mean, and probably does mean, more frequently than your general population, to ensure that if and whenever a student may withdraw, that they have, again, the most complete records possible as part of that transition. I have heard, kind of anecdotally, students might not be in the district very long, or there might not be time to create a record. But if we continue if that continues to happen over the course of multiple transitions, we have a student without any records or academic history. And so the intent of C is that there is a local record that's created promptly and regularly updated. So if a student does move, we've done everything on our end to ensure continuity of their records and their coursework. All right, so that takes us to subsection D. Subsection D requires that the records of a student transferring from out of state or out of country or a Texas non-public school, that their records are evaluated promptly and the award of credit is determined in a timely manner. So this is students first coming into a Texas public school, and that means we need to build or establish that student record or transcript for that student. And we need to do that, again, for points we just talked about, that as quickly and promptly as possible. 74.26 also addresses non-public school transfers and says that districts can, for general population, and says that districts can use a variety of methods to determine the content of coursework completed by the student prior to enrolling in a Texas public school. So you may not have apples to apples when you're looking at a transcript that's not from a public school, but D requires that you perform the evaluation. You can use a lot of different methods for determining what the student actually did, and that you're creating that local transcript as efficiently as possible. So moving to subsection E, we've talked about proportionate credit. This section deals specifically with the award of proportionate credit by requiring districts to award proportionate credit when a student completes only half of a course. So for most districts, that means awarding half a credit at the end of the semester. This rule is important and necessary because while 74.26 allows the award of proportionate credit for the general student population, it's not required. It's actually a local district decision. A district can wait until the end of the school year to award a full credit, and some do that. However, 74.26 and this rule 89-1607 require that students in foster care must be awarded proportionate credit. So it's not the district's option for students in substitute care or who are homeless. So there's an additional provision in this section that states that the receiving district must not only award proportionate credit, they must ensure that proportionate credit has been awarded appropriately. That's the second sentence in this section. So again, not only that you are establishing and awarding proportionate credit when the student is enrolled in your district, but that you have ensured that the student has been awarded half credits. So that might be prior to enrollment. So for example, If a student enrolls in your district in December or January and has not received credit for coursework that you see the student was enrolled in the course and may have completed, that might be a good indicator that there needs to be a discussion with the sending school district. You know, what was missing? Did the student just leave before grades were filed and it's just not in the record? Is the student actually eligible for that proportionate credit? And that's really what we mean by saying that they have been awarded credit proportionately, and doing perhaps a little bit of research. And again, reaching out and making that connection with the sending district can help you to do that. And those kind of questions that you ask can kind of naturally lead us to subsection F, which is on the next slide. So subsection F pertains to when you perform the evaluation, it's determined that a student has been enrolled in a course but has not earned credit. The district may use, and here's that language again, a variety of methods to determine whether the student may be eligible for full or appropriate credit. So it's really connected to G in determining if they've been awarded proportionate credit, for example, appropriately. And so what this is really about is when we talk about methods of proof, what does the student know? A variety of methods really means there are a lot of different ways to determine a student's proficiency and what they know in respect to the content of the course. So for that student who left right before the end of the semester, I mean, perhaps in speaking with a sending district, it's discovered they're just missing a final exam. Can that student complete the exam, or can they take a local assessment to see what they know? Maybe they have that proficiency, they just haven't had an opportunity to demonstrate that yet. You can administer a credit by exam as another common method for determining student proficiency. So the student was enrolled and attending. Maybe they know what they need to know, and we just need to find a method for an opportunity for them to demonstrate what they know, and that they have gained proficiency in the TEKS. That is the second sentence of F that I really want to highlight, that while we want to be flexible and resourceful in our evaluation of students and their records, the decision about the award of credit must be based on demonstrated proficiency in the state requirements for the course, which are the TEKS. It can't be just that they were enrolled and they have the seat time. We need to give them the opportunity to show that they have the skills and the knowledge that they're going to need to be successful in the next course and for beyond high school. So this is where it's really critical to have all of the records that you need to make that content-driven assessment. G is just highlighting one of those methods, again, methods of evaluation of student proficiency, and that's credit by exam. So this requires that a district, and I say district a lot, I of course am inclusive of our charter schools as well, but that they must provide opportunities for a student who is homeless or in substitute care who enrolls in the district or charter school after the start of the year to be administered a credit by exam at any point in a year. You'll see a reference again to chapter 74. This is 74.24. That section of our administrative code requires that districts administer credit by exam during 4 testing windows. But this provision requires that for students who are homeless or in foster care, the district must provide that opportunity at any point in the school year. And so that's important to know, that this exam can be requested as a part of the evaluation and process for determining if a student is eligible for credit. And I think that takes us to our last subsection, subsection H, which is broken into 5 parts or 5 paragraphs. These are additional district and charter school requirements. The first requires that the district or charter school develop processes for students with deficits or incomplete coursework that would impede their graduation, their on-time graduation, and that the district, that process must include how to address any of those deficiencies. So, again, award of credit must be based on proficiency. So you've done all this timely evaluation, updated records, but at the end of the day, you find that the reality is that you may have a student who has gaps and they're not eligible for credit. H1 requires the development of a plan or processes to address those gaps and create a pathway to proficiency and the award of credit for the student. Sometimes that's credit recovery or accelerated instruction, whatever those processes are, the district is required to have them in place for those students. H2 pertains to the personal graduation plan, specifically for students in middle school. This actually cross-references state law, where the requirement is outlined that at middle school, a student must have a personal graduation plan developed if they either fail a STAR test or if the district determines that the student is unlikely to graduate on time. So it's not required for all middle school students, but I would say statistically speaking, we know that students who are homeless or in foster care are already considered at risk for not graduating on time. And so a PGP probably makes sense for most, if not all of your students in this group. 3, also about the personal graduation plan, also referred to as PGP. For high school students. So again, another reference to state law. This section of law is specific to high school, and it requires that a student upon entering 9th grade must have a personal graduation plan developed, and that personal developed in concert with the student and the student's parent or guardian, and the parent or guardian must sign that personal graduation plan by the end of the school year. So again, this is a requirement for all students in entering 9th grade. I think it is kind of easy to advocate for the idea of having a personal graduation plan for a student at any point if they enter into your system and don't have a personal graduation plan. And at the end of the day, it's a plan for graduation, and that's really our goal for all students. So as practitioners, we should be looking for that when a student comes into our district and sending it along as well. And that comes back to that partnership between receiving and sending school districts, because it can help pick up where the student left off from. Or I should say subsection 4 requires that staff engage actively with the student and the student's parents to develop a plan to recover credit. So this really goes back to number 1, where you have to have those processes in place. 4 is just highlighting the importance of engaging the student and the parent in that plan or guardian. And then finally, subsection I. I is a reference, again, to state law. This is the section of state law 28.025 where the graduation requirements are set forth. And it pertains specifically to grade 11 or 12 students. I've actually dropped in that language from state law on the next slide so that we can take a look at that. What I does is it says that if a student is ineligible in grade 11 or 12 is ineligible to graduate from the district to which they transfer, then the district from which the student transferred, so the sending school district, shall award a diploma at the student's request. So that might seem a little awkward, but what this really addresses is that school districts, because we all have the same graduation requirements to a certain extent, but school districts can exceed minimum requirements for graduation. You may be in a district that does that. They require health or speech or a local history course, but for whatever reason, that is a requirement that wasn't in the PGP for a student in their previous district, and they're not on track to meet that additional requirement. If the student requests, that student may and shall be afforded the opportunity to graduate from the district from which they transferred. And so that's 28.025I. So I've walked through those requirements pretty quickly, but here's kind of the highlights. Again, not so much differences as it is, these are these requirements in this essentially new section. First, that title, that is an easy change to highlight. This was previously titled Award of Credit, which is what it's called in 74.26. So we've just made a distinction here. And then the title in Chapter 89 is Evaluation of Student Records for Students Who Are Homeless or in Substitute Care. This section, again, has been significantly updated to align with Chapter 74, curriculum policy, and other related requirements in state law. Highlights from this section we want you to take away: you must ensure that the records or transcripts are evaluated promptly, that they're complete, that they're accurate, that they're up to date. Additionally, once you've done that with that new transcript for that new student, you continue to maintain and regularly update the local student records so you're well positioned to pass those along if needed. The second to last bullet point, remember, you can use a variety of ways to determine whether a student is eligible for full or proportionate credit for coursework completed. And again, sometimes that's a conversation and making, again, bleeding up to those others, ensuring that you have all the records you need to make that determination. And then finally, you must have processes in place for students who have credit deficits that would impact their graduation, and ensure that the student and the student's parent or guardian are engaged in those plans. And then not highlighted on this slide, but that I want to remind you is that subsection A, that's the policy your district must have in place that pulls all of these points together so that you're ensure that you're in compliance, not only that you're in compliance, but that you're meeting the needs of students in this population. So that's really it for me in terms of walking you through some of these curriculum requirements. I am going to pass the hat to Kelly's team to kind of talk about like boots on the ground practitioners addressing these requirements.
Awesome, Jessica, thank you so much for that overview. And just to heads up, we do have quite a few questions in the chat. So we'll go ahead and have Dr. Watson for the next slide. And then if there's a few questions that you feel comfortable answering, we'll jump in and have you do that.
So now we want to provide those strategies for implementation based upon everything that Jessica just explained to us. So we want to make sure that you provide and make sure you have a designated staff member responsible for each one of those requirements set in 19 Texas Administrative Code 89.1607. So make sure that you have someone in place to handle all of these requirements that we just covered. Also ensure that a protocol is set in place for students who are McKinney-Vento eligible or in foster care to be administered CBEs at any time during the year. So what is that procedure and those protocols that you have in place when a student who is McKinney-Vento eligible or a student in foster care comes to your campus and want to take CBEs? Also collaborate with your district and staff campus regarding any decisions regarding proportionate credit for coursework completed by McKinney-Vento eligible students or students in substitute care. So what are your procedures in place for, and who makes those decisions? So it's good to know all of that information ahead of time. So when it actually happens, you can follow your procedures that you have in place in your district regarding proportionate credit. And then actively engage the students and the guardians in the personal graduation plan process. So make sure you are talking to them, letting them know what does the district offer, and also any of those process, and make sure they understand the plans or any plans for credit recovery and those completions. And then lastly, work with your campus and your district staff for sending district records to ensure that all student records are complete and up to date when you are sending them to schools. So you want to make sure that all of your records, all the student records are together and are able to read them when you send them to schools. So we want to ensure that the student is able to continue with their educational program at new campuses. So these are very helpful strategies for implementation of this rule.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Watson, and walking us through those. Jessica, is there anything else that you'd like to answer live with any of the questions that came in?
I will continue to answer questions as they come in. They're great questions, but they're so varied, it's hard to pick one. But one thing I do want to highlight that I talked so much about award of credit in high school that sometimes this is about grade placement, especially when a student's coming from out of country or from another school district, is that's also assessing that the student is placed in the appropriate grade placement. And then all of the other follow suit, complete records and maintaining local records for that student. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessica. Great. So we will continue on with our next section, which Dr. Watson will be leading us through, and that's the placement and educational programs and courses.
Thank you. So now let's continue talking about our students in placement and educational programs and courses. So, and remember, Jessica told you anything that is new and underlined, we wanted to highlight that information for you, and also any terminology and wording that was in this whole entire presentation. We wanted to make sure that you understood what is new for the new rule, and we wanted to highlight this information for you. So 89.1609, now we're in a new section, and A, school districts and open enrollment charter schools must establish procedures to receive, review, and assess student records for the initial course and educational program placement for a student who is homeless or in substitute care upon enrollment at a new school. So remember, based upon everything Jessica just stated, you want to make sure you review those records. You first of all receive them, then review them, and make sure you can assess those students' records so they can have good continuation of programs within your school. So that's what A is telling us. B, we want school districts and open enrollment charts to ensure that school students who are homeless or in substitute care have that opportunity to pursue the same endorsement categories to the extent possible. So if only one endorsement is offered, it must be multidisciplinary studies. So everyone must offer multidisciplinary studies. So if a student is coming to your campus and has an endorsement already category, we want districts to work with that student to maintain that same endorsement category. So please make sure you are working and viewing those records and assisting the student. Talking to the student is a great thing to do, especially you can do this during the enrollment conference. So having those conversations and talking about placement and the programs that your district offers and what is very valuable to the student is very helpful during this time. Next, for C, 89.1609C. So to the extent possible, so school districts and open enrollment charters shall ensure that the continuation of the student's course and educational programs, if appropriate. So from the previous district or charter school, by placing that student in comparable courses and programs for which they are eligible. So if they were in another program in their previous district, we want to make sure that you are providing continuation of those student courses and educational programs. So if they are in those programs, we want to maintain that in the new district, such as gifted and talented. So if they were GT in their previous district, we want to make sure you assess those records to determine their eligibility in your district also. Early college, high school, also emergent bilingual. So you want to make sure you are looking at these programs and placing those students in comparable courses and programs for which they are eligible. And indeed, we want to promote academically challenging and career preparation courses for our students who are McKinney-Vento eligible and in foster care. So make sure you are providing this incentive for the students. So if they meet those eligibility requirements, you want to promote those programs. You want to promote honors. You want to promote advanced placement courses. You want to promote CTE for our students, career technical education courses for our students who are in foster care and McKinney-Vento eligible. So please, that is the purpose of D. Make sure you are having these conversations in the enrollment conference of what your district offers and what the student prefers and their interests. So we want to engage the conversation and make sure we are offering those courses. So the course endorsement categories, so I want to put this on here just to make sure that we understand that the students can earn one or more endorsements in high school for their high school diploma. So endorsements consist of sequence of courses that are grouped together by the interest or occupational skills. So every CTE program or study leads to an endorsement. So the endorsements that we do offer or that should be offered are science, technical, engineering, and mathematics, so STEM. You have your business and industry, public service, arts and humanities, and multidisciplinary studies. So as the rules state, so if you don't have anything else, we have multidisciplinary studies. So please make sure you are letting your students know this information and what you offer in your districts. So now I want to highlight the changes in 89.1609. So we wanted to make sure we establish the rules of receiving, reviewing, and assessing those student records for the initial course in educational program placement. So we want to make sure that information was in the rule. We want to ensure to the extent possible that the student has the opportunity to pursue the same endorsement category of which they were in their previous district. Also, the continuation of course and programs by placing students in those comparable courses and programs to the extent possible. And then lastly, to promote those placements in academically challenging and career preparation courses. We wanted to make sure that wording was in there so the students know about those courses and information. Next, strategies for implementation. So the discussion of the educational course programs should occur during the enrollment conference. And remember, in the part one, we talked more about the enrollment conference. So please make sure, if you haven't seen that, go back and view that information. It is very important. So there are a lot of conversations that could happen in the enrollment conference, and educational and course programs should be one of those topics. And then provide training to ensure that the staff understands how to implement the continuation of students' educational course programs. And remember, Jessica spoke in the previous section about how to do that and proportionate credit and all of that information. So make sure you are looking at how you can make sure that the staff understands the continuation of those student educational course programs. And also remember that the high school PGP is a requirement. The personal graduation plan is a requirement for all students upon entering of the 9th grade. So the student and parent must sign, and they must sign and confirm the personal graduation plan by the end of the 9th grade. So this process includes reviewing the distinguished level of achievement and those endorsements students wish to pursue. So we want to make sure you are having those conversations. Next, we want to make sure the district staff can discuss information regarding the LEA's endorsement categories during the enrollment conference. So whatever endorsement categories your district offers, make sure the student understands that information. And then if the student was already in a course, the district should make reasonable effort to enable that student to continue his or her enrollment in that course. So that is a very good strategy for implementation for the rule. And then lastly, while the exact pathway that the student had planned on may not be available, the options that the LEA offer may enable the student to continue pursuing that endorsement, but with different courses. So based upon your course selection within your districts, we want to make sure that the students could still pursue that endorsement. So these are some very helpful strategies for implementation of 89.1609. So
thank you so much, Dr. Watson, for walking us through that. I'm just opening the chat and wondering if there's anything that you feel like we could answer live. These are wonderful questions that y'all are providing us.
So I'm looking for something that goes with 89.1609. So the school is a credit recovery charter school and only general courses and CTE is offered. What else can be done to help this population? So I need more explanation on the actual, if general courses are offered, did they complete those general courses? So look at how you're looking at the record that is coming from the sending school to ensure what you can offer that student for continuation of courses for that student.
I would also just chime in, Dr. Watson, that that's one of the reasons why the multidisciplinary endorsement is required if only one option is available, because it's really one of the options under the multidisciplinary is closely aligned to what we used to call the 4x4, which are really some of those basic courses. So if you had that selection in place, and when we were transitioning to the foundation high school program and nervous about endorsements, if you were already offering the recommended high school program, you were offering the multidisciplinary. And so that tends to be the option, I think, that is most popular in those alternative settings that might not be able to offer CTE, for example, or a wide catalog of CTE courses.
Great information. Thank you, Jessica. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and go into our next section and keep those excellent questions coming, and the team will do our best to answer. So this section will be Dr. Bowser, promotion of access to educational and extracurricular programs, summer programs, credit transfer services, electronic courses, and after-school tutoring programs for students who are homeless or in substitute care. And similarly to the other sections, we'll be walking you through those underlines. The new parts are highlighted in blue, italicized and underlined, so that those are going to pop out. And then Dr. Bowser will lead us through strategies for implementation. So with that, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry about the earlier issues with my mic, but I had it up over my head, but now I have it here towards my mouth. So, all right, I was going to start off with covering 89.1611A. And for this one, it says school districts and open enrollment charter schools must develop processes to increase awareness of opportunities available to students who are homeless or in substitute care to participate in extracurricular programs, summer programs, credit transfer services, electronic courses, and after-school programs. And what we want to point out here is you see the parts that are bolded and italicized. Those are the parts that were added that was new. And so when you think about the language changing from, it used to say must provide opportunities, but now it says must develop processes to increase awareness of opportunities. Providing opportunities does not require an act on behalf of the LEA. Theoretically, everyone has an opportunity. However, developing processes to increase awareness is a call to action. It requires the LEAs to take actions to create processes that increase awareness. And with this, the LEA has an expected outcome. Initially, the rule required access to electronic courses offered through the Texas Virtual School Network. But by amending the language to electronic courses, this actually increases the opportunities and access to a wide variety of electronic courses, such as tutor.com, or courses through college programs such as Texas Tech and University of Texas Online. And then raising awareness is about communication. Understand how and where information flows in your school, your district, or in your community, whether that be newsletters, postings around the school, social media, daily announcements and broadcasts, etc. Doing things like setting up tables in the cafeteria to get students to recruit, your football players, cheerleaders, basketball players, and wearing jerseys and uniforms, your theater kids dressed in costumes for recruitment, choir performing during lunchtime, other things like that. This is about getting creative to raise that awareness. When I was a principal, I would do all these sorts of things to allow, because we wanted to recruit the kids into the programming. All right. 89.1611 section B, this one is about removing barriers. And so school districts and open enrollment charters must identify and remove barriers whenever possible to participation by students who are homeless and in substitute care in extracurricular programs, summer programs, credit transfer services, electronic courses, and after-school tutoring programs. Again, previously the language said that school districts should encourage participation, but now it's another call to action. It requires the LEA to identify and remove the barriers. And so with this, it means you have to, the amended language requires intentional actions of the LEA to provide and promote that access to additional services such as extracurricular programs, credit transfer services, and electronic courses, in addition to those that were previously written into the rule. And so again, this one is another call to action and a requirement by the LEA to identify and remove those barriers. And sometimes that will come in talking with your students. Talk to kids about why they're not in something, and they'll give you your answer. Is it financial? Is that they don't have transportation to be able to come to concerts and events? I would have all those kind of things. And so it's really important to do that. One of the things I would do is I paid, as a principal, I paid for a tutorial bus several times a week that took kids could stay for tutorials, or they could stay for practices and things like that. And the bus would actually take them home after school. It was about $8,000 a year spent doing that, but it really did encourage more kids to stay, which was a win-win for everyone. All right, 89.1611 section C. Appropriate school district or open enrollment charter staff must facilitate the process to complete and submit a University Interscholastic League waiver, or UIL, waiver of residence application form for a student who is homeless and plans to participate in varsity athletics. In compliance with Texas Education Code 25.001F, a durational residence requirement may not be used to prohibit a student in substitute care from fully participating in any activity sponsored by the school district. So again, kind of covering what it used to say, to what it now says. It used to say that the staff must complete and submit the form. And now it says that the school district must, or the LEA must facilitate the process. This a good opportunity to do this. In the updated rule, the LEAs are required to facilitate that process of completing the waiver. Previous language included students in foster care remaining in school of origin, reading outside, as allowed under Rule Section 442. And that's where you find information about the durational residency. For those who aren't familiar with varsity athletics, Section 442, Rule Section 442 is where the residency requirements are. And it used to require that a student had to be, or it still does require, but for homeless students in substitute care, those students cannot, durational residence requirement cannot be used to keep them from playing in varsity athletics. And so typically they are 1 year of residency is required before a student can participate in varsity athletics. But under this rule, if a student is homeless or they're in substitute care, that durational residency requirement may not be used to keep them from playing in varsity athletic sports.
I wanted to jump in. It's actually just for the students in substitute care. So with McKinney Ventures students, there is still a durational residency requirement, but for substitute care, it's been removed.
I got you. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Next slide. And I meant just a moment ago, I mentioned Texas Education Code 25.001F. So I wanted to go ahead and bring that to your attention just so you can see it. It says a child placed in foster care by an agency of the state or by a political subdivision shall be permitted to attend the public schools in the district in which the foster parents reside free of charge to foster students or the agency. And it says a durational residence requirement may not be used to prohibit that child from participating in any activity sponsored by the school district. All right, so in following with my colleagues, here's the changes, a summary of the changes that were made. The policy, we updated the tech policy to reflect all the requirements in 25.007 related to promotion of access. We added the requirement to develop the processes, added the requirement to identify and remove the barriers, included the addition of extracurricular programs, credit transfer services, and electronic courses to the list of activities that LEAs are required to promote access and remove barriers to. We updated the UIL information to more accurately align to UIL policy, and we clarified that the language that in alignment with TEC 25.001F, that the durational residency requirement may not be used to keep the student in substitute care from participating in any activity sponsored by the school district. Now we'll talk a little bit about strategies for implementation. So we're going to do these. We're going to go over with A, B, and C. So in the first one, this is talking about section A, which is about increasing awareness. So for this, the LEAs, the LEA leaders, the staff, and stakeholders should all work together in developing those processes to increase that awareness. Talk with your students to understand how access is communicated and learned. Listen to their stories, bring them into the process. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes kids will help you identify those barriers by just listening to them. If they're not involved in something and you're sitting in a cafeteria during lunch duty or something, you're talking to them, or during the enrollment conference, you're talking to them, it's a good idea to go ahead and have that UIL waiver form there. If it's a student who's in substitute care, put that in your welcome packet. It's a great way to go ahead to bring that conversation to light during that time. You want to build and leverage on the culture of inclusivity, community, and belonging to increase awareness and participation. Develop communication plans and strategies that encourage access to student programs. The thing here about raising awareness is, again, it's about the communication flow and access to that communication flow. Again, talk with your kids, understand how that works in your building, and allow students to be your best ambassadors for raising awareness and getting students involved. We'll go on to section B. All right, for section B, this one again is about creating those strategies for implementation. You want to talk with your students, staff, and other stakeholders to understand the barriers to access. You know, is it cost? Is it transportation? Is it program requirements, such as an athletic physical? I can't tell you how many times as a principal that I would talk to a student, and you know, they mentioned that they wanted to play football or wanted to play basketball, but they couldn't get their physical. Either their parents couldn't get them there, or they didn't have the $12 to get the physical. Those things should not be barriers, and the delegate should be creative in helping to remedy some of those issues. You want to develop systematic and innovative solutions towards removing those barriers and encouraging access. You want to leverage relationships and organize your culture to remedy those, and your organizational culture to remedy those barriers. And then with your homeless and students in substitute care, remember that they're automatically considered economically disadvantaged, and they're entitled to benefits such as fee waivers. So one of the things I'd mentioned is that I was a summer school principal, and in order to make sure students had access to that, if they were economically disadvantaged, we waived their summer school fees to encourage them to come. You know, we made sure that they had a bus that would pick them up and bring them to school. And so again, the idea is be creative, be innovative about remedying those barriers that are there. And so here in section C, this one is about UIL, and you make sure kids can participate in extracurriculars. During the enrollment conference, take that opportunity to discuss if the student would like to participate in UIL sponsored activities. And like I mentioned earlier, go ahead and have that waiver. If they're in substitute care, go ahead and have a copy of that waiver there in the welcome packet, and then when you discuss at the enrollment conference. Review the required forms that are needed for UIL waivers and participation. Again, talked about providing a copy of that waiver form in the welcome packet. Remember that only participation in varsity sports requires UIL participation waiver for certain students. Students who are in C team or some of the other areas, they don't need C team, JV sports, theater, and band. They don't need a waiver to participate in that. So the student needs to, but do remember that the student does need to follow the district processes for tryouts and team selection. The UIL waiver does not exempt them from this process. So it's a great idea here to again, in raising awareness and bring down those barriers. Create a tab on your website, you know, with the list of all your clubs and sports and fine arts programs. One of the things I did as principal to try to get kids involved was we allowed every teacher who wanted to host any kind of a club to host any kind of club. We had knitting club, we had anime club, we had Pokemon club, we had something called a taco club. I never saw them eat tacos, but you know, it brought them into the room, it brought them in the building. They were there, they're involved in something, right? And so another idea is providing a brief letter with a QR code to links to that page that I was just talking about with where all those things are listed, and reference that document during the transition conference and ask the student or parent to go ahead and scan the QR code to make sure they know how to access that information on the web page. And with that, we will go ahead and see if there are any questions for me directly related.
There are a few different questions, Dr. Bowser. So if there's some that we feel comfortable to answer, we'll chime in. Some of these that are getting a little bit into the details of the UIL, it's really not our policy area. So we'll definitely follow up. Rita, your question, we'll follow up with you on that. We just want to make sure we're providing super accurate information. What we do have is vetted by UIL, but want to make sure that we follow up on with any more particulars. So we'll do that offline.
All right, sounds good. And with that, I will go ahead and pass that. I'll begin answering questions here in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jordan Brown for our next section.
Great, thanks for walking us through. Next up is Jordan, and she'll be sharing about the promotion of post-secondary information and the updates that we've made to this section. Go ahead, Jordan.
Thank you, Kelly. Hi, everyone. As Kelly said, we'll be talking about TAC 89.1613, promotion of post-secondary. So on this in this section of the rule, we'll be talking about sort of three different pieces. So the first piece applies to both McKinney-Vento eligible students and students who are in foster care. So that's 1613A 1 through 4. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then the next subsection applies to McKinney-Vento eligible students only. And then the last one applies to foster care students only. So I'll reiterate that as we go, but I just wanted to call that out. There's three things that apply to different student groups. So let's get started and go into the first subsection, A1 and 2. So this is the section that applies to both students who are experiencing homelessness and students in substitute care. Under 1 here, the first requirement here is for school districts and open enrollment charter school counselors or other designated staff to work with both the McKinney-Vento and the foster care liaisons to ensure that students who are homeless or in substitute care can graduate with endorsements if applicable and have post-secondary plans identified in their personal graduation plans. And this is a requirement under TEC 28.02121. So if you want to see more information about those personal graduation plans, you can find that in that code. But this requirement just outlines that those school counselors need to be working with our McKinney-Vento and our foster care liaisons to ensure that these students are receiving these post-secondary plans, graduating with endorsements. Okay, and then under 2 here, our school districts and open enrollment charter schools are required to provide post-secondary counseling in alignment with TEC 33.007 for all students, which includes students who are experiencing homelessness or who are in substitute care. So again, this is really referencing a state law regarding counseling for post-secondary education, and it's really calling out that students who are experiencing homelessness or in substitute care also need to be receiving this counseling. Okay, on the next slide, we're going to continue. This is another a continuation of the section that applies to students who are homeless or in substitute care. LEAs must connect students to college readiness initiatives, campus visits, and other post-secondary preparation opportunities provided by the LEA. So basically, you need to make sure that these students are included, informed, and encouraged to participate in these activities so that post-secondary education becomes more of a reality for them, right? We want to make sure that they're engaged with these activities so that they can become encouraged to apply and continue on to post-secondary. In subsection 4, school counselors are required to provide information about post-secondary education to the student and the student's parent or guardian during the first year that a student is enrolled in high school, so their freshman year, and then each subsequent year throughout high school. So basically, this is referring back to TEC 33.007. So if you want more information about this requirement, definitely go back and review that there. But again, we're just kind of calling out, like, we need to include students experiencing homelessness and those in foster care in this requirement for student counselors to provide this information to them. Okay, on to the next section, B1 and 2. So this is a section that applies only to McKinney-Vento eligible students. And really what it's doing here is calling out federal requirements outlined in the McKinney-Vento Act for students who are eligible for McKinney-Vento. So the first one here is the requirement for McKinney-Vento liaisons to inform unaccompanied homeless youth of their status as independent students for the purpose of the FAFSA or for financial aid for higher education, and providing that verification to those students as well. So it's just outlining that requirement. If you're a McKinney-Vento liaison, you probably already know about this, but it's just added here as well, just to provide a little more information about it in a section that it applies in. And then number 2 here, school counselors are required to advise and assist students experiencing homelessness with college preparation and readiness pursuant to that USC code once again. So again, this is already a federal requirement. We're just calling it out here for our students experiencing homelessness. And if you want more information, you can always review that USC code or talk to us over at the Touchy program, and we can give you a little more information about that. Okay, and now let's look at the section on students who are in substitute care. So this is C1 and 2, and I believe it continues on to 3 through 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the first section here is the requirement for LEAs to ensure that a student in substitute care who is in grade 11 or 12 is provided information regarding tuition and fee exemptions under TEC 54.366. It gets a little complicated here, so I'm just going to summarize it really quickly. Basically, this is a requirement for LEAs to have the information about receiving free college tuition if they enroll in a dual credit course during high school or enroll in a college as an undergraduate student before they turn 25. So just letting them know, like, hey, there's an amazing opportunity for you here to receive free tuition, and here's how you get it. And it can be very easy by applying for that dual credit course. So this is basically what that section is saying there. The next one here is the requirement for LEAs to inform students who are in substitute care of tuition and fee exemptions under TEC 54.367 regarding monthly payments, medical assistance benefits, and the reimbursement of fees. So if you go and look at that TEC code, it's for exemptions for adopted students who were formerly in foster care or other residential care. So it's specifically for students who were adopted out of those systems. And informing them of the tuition and fee exemptions and other services that they receive as a result of that. Okay, and then sections 3 through 5. So again, this section applies to students who are in substitute care only. So LEAs are required to ensure that students who are in substitute care are informed that every higher institution in Texas has a designated foster care liaison to assist students. So not only do they have that liaison there for them at the district, at the school district, there's also one at the higher education institution, and that's a requirement by law. So connect them with that person, let them know that they're there so that they have that person and that contact to help provide them support services and get them access to anything that they need as they're in post-secondary education. Additionally, under 4 here, foster care liaisons are encouraged to support students in substitute care with linking to colleges to help them develop connections and facilitate effective transitions to that post-secondary education. So basically what we're saying is make sure that they're connected as much as possible to the people who can help them in their college career so that they can transition successfully as they move on to post-secondary. And then number 5, foster care liaisons, school counselors, and others are required to assist with seeking and applying for scholarships for which the student may qualify. So basically your staff need to help these students research and apply for scholarships that apply to them so that they can be equipped with as much funding as possible to jump into that post-secondary education. Okay. So that was the outline of the rule text here as it applies to post-secondary education. We wanted to kind of give a couple of reminders about FAFSA. So this is sort of a general reminder about a new requirement for all students, but obviously this applies for students who are experiencing homelessness or who are in foster care as well. So beginning with students enrolled in 12th grade during the 21-22 year, your students are required to do one of the 3 things in order to graduate. And this is under TEC 28.0256. So they're required to either submit the FAFSA, submit the TAFSA, or submit a signed opt-out form. Now, obviously, we want them to do the first 2, which is definitely very important because both of these students are, they qualify as independent status on the FAFSA. So this is just calling out this general requirement. Again, if you want more information, you can review the TEC code. So as I mentioned, each of these students do qualify as independent. So on the next slide here, we have the section where that question is on the FAFSA. So here, this is the 23-24 application, and this is the foster care question. So it asks them at any time since you turned 13, were both your parents deceased, were you in foster care, or were you a dependent or ward of a court? All they need to do is select yes here. And then there's more information about that in the notes section for students in foster care. So we just want to call out, this is where that is. And then for students who are McKinney-Vento eligible and unaccompanied as well, there's 3 questions that kind of help determine if that student was an unaccompanied homeless youth during their time in high school. So it also kind of gets at who is that person that identified them and who can help verify that student. So these are the questions for, I believe, the current application. And then on the next slide, we can see the notes section, which provides a little bit more information about, what to do if you answered yes, or what to do if you answered no. So we won't run through that entirely here, but just note that these are on the FAFSA. Have your students make sure that they know how to answer these questions. So help walk them through that. And again, if they do answer yes and receive that verification that they were unaccompanied and experiencing homelessness, then they can complete this form as an independent student. Okay. So want to run through really quickly on the summary of changes for this section. So again, we updated the section to include requirements for McKinney-Vento eligible students and students in substitute care. So we kind of broke out some things that maybe applied to one group, maybe applied to another group, or applied to both. So we clarified that a little bit more. We reiterated existing policy requirements for students where applicable. So back when I was talking about TEC code, referencing that. So some things are already existing in statute. So you can find those there. And we just wanted to provide them here where they applied as well, just to have you another place where you can find these requirements. We also updated the federal law citation for McKinney-Vento liaisons, as well as adding the responsibility of counselors to refer those students to post-secondary related opportunities. Continuing on with the summary of the changes here. And again, these are all the underlined portions of the PowerPoint. So if you want to go back and look at them, once you have that PowerPoint, you can review them there as well. But we also added that LEAs are required to connect McKinney-Vento students to college readiness initiatives and provide them that post-secondary engagement. And then we also strengthened the foster care requirements related to the importance of promotion of post-secondary education and linking with those foster care liaisons as well. Additionally, we added that LEAs are required to inform students in foster care about higher education foster care liaisons to assist students. And then clarified that those foster care liaisons, school counselors, and others are required to assist with helping those students apply for financial aid. So those are all the changes. There's quite a few in this section. So this is just all a summary of what we just went over. Okay, and now to leave you off with some strategies for implementing these requirements. The first thing that we recommend you do is become familiar with the required deadlines and share higher education contact information with students who are experiencing homelessness and students are in substitute care. It does say here unaccompanied youth, but obviously that applies to all of our students here. Some things also are a requirement for certain student groups and not for others, but we do recommend, obviously, it's always encouraged to provide students with as much support as possible. So if you see something that applies to both student groups and you say, hey, I want to provide these services to this other student as well, obviously we highly recommend that. Additionally, provide students opportunities to attend college visits, career presentations, and informational webinars. So just reach out, make sure they're involved in those things. Ensure that students have a transition plan to support entering the workforce, technical school, community college, or four-year university. And also host post-secondary information sessions during the day and evenings. Give them time to come to these events. Also maybe have time for their parent, guardian, family, whoever's taking care of them, to attend with them, perhaps, just to keep everybody engaged in these opportunities. Continuing on, we have so many strategies for this section. We want to provide students with information and endorsements offered in the LEA. Let them know that they can achieve these things. Build a communication system between the counselors and the liaisons to ensure those post-secondary plans have been identified. That's one of the things that's outlined in the statute. Make sure there's collaboration happening at multiple levels between those liaisons. Ensure each student has endorsements within their personal graduation plan, and staff who's working on behalf of the student, they can significantly support that post-secondary planning by connecting them with that higher education foster care liaisons and other student supports on campus. So there is a higher ed foster care liaison. There's not a higher ed homeless liaison that's required. So for students experiencing homelessness, just make sure that they're connected with those supports. Definitely reach out to that financial aid office as well. That's always helpful. Sometimes we do get questions about what supports are available for students experiencing homelessness. And we always recommend reaching out to that financial aid office and seeing what the university provides for them, because there are requirements across the state. And now I'm just gonna pass it on to LaTrenda. Do you have anything else to add about students in foster care here?
You did a great job of covering everything. So just want you to be aware of the post-secondary opportunities for our students in foster care, and identifying those for the student and making sure that they understand all the opportunities that they have, especially the free tuition and fee waiver, and also those post-secondary, and making sure they fill out that FAFSA correctly. So if they are identified, they can be given more opportunities, so those universities or the post-secondary opportunities can come to them when they fill out that information. So please work with your students to ensure that they are getting all of those opportunities that are out there.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. I know we're at time for this section. Kelly, should we go ahead and see if there's any questions here, or maybe wait until the end of the section?
Yeah, no, we can go ahead and do a couple minutes of questions if there's anything that we're able to answer off the top.
Let me look here. Maybe a question for you, Dr. Watson. What if a student was in foster care and they were adopted? Do they still qualify?
So based upon the standards of what Jordan just went over, it depends on the circumstances and the ages. So we want you to look at that information. We have more information on our website in our foster care and student success guide also that pertains to more information, detailed information, because certain circumstances may occur based upon that adoption.
Awesome. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, so I think we can move on.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Every team member for walking us through so many robust updates and the changes. Really appreciate what you've shared today. Thank you, audience, for being with us. And so as we are kind of coming to the end of this, we would like to offer this opportunity for reflection. So please identify one key action step as a result of today's presentation. Just go ahead and note that down on your iPad, a sticky note on your desk, type it up on your computer. We know that there was a lot shared, but let's all identify one thing that we can do today. And so we've got one thing, but let's also think about one person that we can share something that we learned with from today's session, and go ahead and write that person's name down. And there might be a few people or more than one, but please, let's definitely identify at least one person that we're going to share information from today something new that we learned. And with that, I'd like to add, is there somebody that you need to collaborate with? Is there somebody that you need to talk to? So much of what Jessica was sharing in her section related to curriculum in that area, potentially there's somebody in that department within your LEA that you need to meet with and talk to and have some conversations about these new requirements and what they mean and how we apply them. Similarly, with each one of these sections, it's so much bigger than an individual in the district. So who do we need to bring in our partnership, and who do we need to talk to? So who are we going to share with? Who are we going to collaborate with? And then we definitely want to encourage you to download TEA's Transition Assistance Toolkit. Here is what the updated tools look like. And again, this was mostly all content that we went over in part 1. This information is located on our highly mobile and at-risk webpage, specifically under our Tools and Resources tab, which you can find at the bottom of our page. And the second resource that's listed is this updated transition toolkit. Another resource that's there, I just want to make sure that you all know about it, is ESSER 3 funds and special populations. And it's a new brief, completely unrelated to this presentation, but related to our work and our service to kids, and want to make sure that you guys know that it's there. Please go ahead and go to that page and download it. ESSER 3 funds are available to assist and support underrepresented student groups and special populations and meeting their unique needs post-COVID. There's so much that you have flexibility to do with those funds. And so we've created this brief with our grants division. It was recently posted, so I want to make sure that you know about it. So we've got 2 hot resources, our updated toolkit, as well as that ESSER 3 funds brief. And we will be talking more about that on our May 5th webinar, which will be when our last quarterly webinar is for this 22-23 school year. Okay, and lastly, we would love to get your feedback on today's presentation. So we have this QR code for you. Please go ahead and screenshot it and provide us your feedback on the session. And I'm going to go ahead and look at some of the questions and see if there's anything else that we can answer. I know we've been answering as we've been going along. We just want to see if there's any final questions that have popped in. Love, folks are sharing. They're going to share it with the dean, the CTE department. They're going to follow up with their registrars. Wonderful. Downloading the toolkit. Thank you all for dropping this information in. Wonderful. If there are remaining questions that you all have, please do email us. We are here to support you and answer your questions. Some of these are more in depth and we're not able to answer them live, but definitely want to follow up, do the follow-up that we need to do, and then the follow-up with you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are, again, really grateful. I know there's some questions about when will the presentations be posted. We will be sending them out again following this presentation, and then we'll be working to get them posted on our website. So stay tuned on that, and we will be getting that information up and available, but want to make sure that you have the deck, want to make sure that you have the video recording. And again, just thank you for taking time out today on this Wednesday, April 5th, to be with us amidst everything that you have going on and all of the places where you could be. You chose to be with us for the last hour and a half. And we just want to say thank you. We honor you. We honor your time. And we're so thankful for the work that you do in Texas, supporting our students, our leaders, and being who you are in our communities across this great state. So with that, this concludes our presentation. Please follow up, and we will see you for our quarterly webinar in May. Take care, everybody.